Hi, my name is Carol from Provident Credit Union. Thank you for joining with us today, where we will be discussing how to find free money for college with scholarships. This webinar is being recorded. All participants have been muted, so please use the Q&A box for any questions. All attendees will receive a follow-up email with today's recording and presentation deck within a week. Your presenter today is Jeff Lackey. He is a Director of Relationship Management at Sallie Mae. And with that, I'd like to now hand it off to Jeff. Welcome, Jeff.
I appreciate it, Carol. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This is a great topic, especially this time of year, to kind of discuss. Hopefully, after today, you'll get a better sense as to what scholarships are, kind of learn a little bit more about who is like scholarship eligible, which essentially, hopefully, after this presentation, you'll learn everybody is. And hopefully we can start to tackle some of the millions of dollars that go unawarded in scholarships each and every year. It's a fantastic free way to help offset some of your costs going to school. So with that, hopefully what we'll be able to cover today is talk a little bit about paying for college, so that you understand how scholarships work and how they can really help cover some of the costs. And there are a variety of different scholarship resources that we'll discuss. We'll touch on scholarship search engines, how easy they are to navigate. We'll also learn some strategies on creating a winning scholarship essay, and then we'll share some tips on applying for scholarships. So, because we've got a lot of information to cover today, I want to make sure that I have plenty of time scheduled for questions afterward. We'll go ahead and just dive right into it. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about how scholarships can offset some of the cost of higher education. Prior to that, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the importance of making a plan to pay for school. So when we're talking about paying for school, we're really talking about the 1, 2, 3 approach. We always want to start off with the money that you don't have to pay back to supplement your savings and income. That's going to include maximizing scholarships, which we're all here for today, but it also can include grants as well as work study. The next that you'll want to explore are what we call federal student options, federal student aid options. And these can come in the form of aid that is deemed eligible by filling out a document, what is called the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Everything that we cover in regard to how to fund education, we want to make sure that we address the free aid money first, then any aid that you would be eligible for through or via the FAFSA documentation. And then third, or lastly, if you find that after you've explored those two first resources that you need additional funds to kind of help cover a gap or some maybe unmet need, sometimes maybe some of your non-billable charges, maybe like your living costs, transportation and whatnot, that is when you would want to consider a responsible student loan or tuition payment plans, or any other type of maybe, let's say, parental type loans taken out on behalf of the student, but taken out in the parent's name. Those are the steps that we typically would advise students and families to look at. And of course, today is going to really be focusing on step one. So with that, this chart comes from the College Board, and this is a College Board survey called Trends in College Pricing. Now, this isn't going to be representative right down to the dollar amount of every college or university that you might be interested in, because each college or university is going to have their own specific costs. But just to kind of give you an idea or a set of the investment that you would need per year in order to attend one of these four schools highlighted in this chart. It just kind of shows you some of the figures that you'll be looking at. Now, um, one thing I want to stress is that this is basically representative on what the average 1 year's worth of costs a family would have in order to attend a school. It's not going to be the tuition charge or any other billable charges, maybe like various different fees or your books or stuff like that. This is going to take into account your tuition, your fees, your books and supplies, any personal expenses, transportation, and then, of course, lastly, any housing and food. And some of you may be saying, well, I'm going to live from at home or I live off campus. I'm not going to have any of those expenses at the school. And that might necessarily be correct, meaning that you don't actually get billed by the school for those, but you may potentially have these costs that you have to take care of, especially if you have to go maybe, let's say, from full-time to part-time while working, or maybe you're not going to have a job at all and you've got to account for any transportation costs going back and forth, whether you live on campus in the dorm or live on campus in a fraternity or sorority, or if you live off campus in an apartment or live with your parents while you're going to school. These are the representative costs of all of that included, what the average family, student and family would expect in order to pay over 1 year times 4 years. So you can see here, two-year public college, roughly $21,230 a year. Again, if all of your expenses are just tuition and fees, then it's going to be much lower. Subsequently, just below it, the four-year private college university, the average cost is roughly $65,470. Now, hopefully, after what we teach you today is how scholarships can help alleviate some of these costs, and you'll actually hopefully find that these free aid options are going to be the difference sometimes between thinking, oh, I can only go to one type of school, to maybe making it possible to attend a school that you would not have considered based on cost. Hopefully, scholarships will kind of help level the playing field a bit. So let's talk a little bit more about the importance of the application for federal student aid, which is the FAFSA. Every scholarship that comes from the state or federal governments is going to require that applicants must file a FAFSA. And the same thing goes for the scholarships that come directly from colleges. Many of the financial aid awards that come from colleges, either scholarships or grants, some of them may be merit-based, which are going to be based on your accolades, your talents, your achievements, like academics or sports, or some sort of a performance, or some sort of a level that you've been able to show worthiness in. But not every scholarship is going to be awarded that way. Some of them are going to be what they call need-based, which means that yes, you may have a component of merit, maybe like your academics, but they are also going to ask you questions about your need. And one of the most efficient ways to ask about need and really get a decent representation of how needy you are is to simply ask a question on a scholarship application of what is your SAI, for instance, your student aid index number from the FAFSA. If you didn't file a FAFSA, you wouldn't have that SAI number, but in including that in your scholarship essay, the scholarship providers can get a decent sense as to essentially your needs analysis, or essentially how needy you are. The Department of Education has released the FAFSA application for academic year 26-27 already. It got released in October of this year. Most of the required information comes from your tax return. Most of the information that is on the FAFSA comes from your tax return that you actually do through a direct data exchange when you're in the FAFSA application. It links you directly out to the IRS, and you transfer your information directly from the IRS. So it's super simple, super easy. It's accurate because they're typically looking at a previous calendar year's worth of tax information, hopefully taxes that have already been submitted and been approved. And you're not looking at, let's say, for this upcoming year, 26-27, you're not going to be downloading or direct data file exchanging your 2025 information, which obviously hasn't been completed yet. The FAFSA is going to be asking for your 2024 information, tax information. So hopefully, with a few exceptions, everybody should have that filed. So when you file your FAFSA, like I said, if you're looking at attending for academic year 26-27, highly consider filling that out now. It's available. It'll transfer your 2024 tax information on there. Then, as you start to look for scholarships, if they do ask for any need information, within roughly 3 to 5 days of you completing your FAFSA, you will have your SAI and you will have that student aid index number, and you will also have a synopsis of the information sent back to you via the federal aid processor of all the information you put on the FAFSA. And if a scholarship application asks you for something directly, you'll have it very handy and can just include that in the scholarship directly. So for the past 18 years, Sallie Mae has been conducting an annual survey on how America pays for college. And for the 24-25 academic year, we found the average breakout to be a mix of a variety of sources. First, let's go ahead and take a look at the chart and see the breakout of the funding sources. There are 6 sources of funds that families can rely on, including parent income and savings, as well as student income and savings, and they're all in the shades of blue. Then there's the parent and the student borrowing in shades of yellow, and that's money from relatives and friends are going to be in purple, along with the scholarships and grants that are shaded in pink. So you can see here from the chart that the slide answers the question of how a typical family pays for college, and it shows the percentage of the total reported cost that was covered by each of these sources. Not all families used each funding source, but because this analysis is a composite, all families are combined to come up with this total view. So one thing that we can see from this, one thing that is clear, that when we look at the chart, families used a combination of funding sources to cover their costs for the academic 24-25 year. The largest source came from out-of-pocket contributions, which covered more than half of college spending, while scholarships and grants covered about a quarter, and then the rest was covered by borrow funds, and a small percentage being covered by relatives or friends. Over the last couple of years, families used similar strategies to pay for college, so these percentages haven't shifted significantly. One thing to note is as we talk about the rest of this presentation and scholarships and grants, the more that we can increase that pink portion, the more we can increase that, typically we find that it comes in the reduction of the blue section, which is essentially parent income and savings as student income savings. So after this presentation, you'll see that the more work and effort that you put into looking for scholarships, and potentially winning scholarships, that'll have a direct impact as to how much parent income and savings, student income and savings is used. So last year, 60% of the families we surveyed reported that they relied on scholarships to help pay for college, receiving roughly an average of $8,000. As you'd expect, the percentage of families who relied on scholarships and the amounts vary greatly by school type. And you can also see the percentage of college costs that were covered by scholarships varied by school type. 10% of those costs for families with students at a 2-year public school, 13% of costs for students at a 4-year public school, and 21% of costs for students at a 4-year private school. So, how are student and families finding out about scholarships? And we learned that colleges play a huge role in creating awareness of scholarship opportunities. And that's really not a surprise, since most scholarships are given out by the colleges. High schools were another big source of information on scholarships, as were online search tools, kind of like scholarship searches, in order to find free money. On average, students who applied for scholarships indicated that they submitted 5 applications hoping to win. 70% of families that did not use scholarships last year didn't even apply. So why aren't more families looking at applying for scholarships? And our research suggests that the primary reason has to do with lack of awareness. And this slide breaks out some of the reasons families didn't apply for scholarships. 34% of families who didn't apply told us that they didn't know of any scholarships at all, or didn't know of scholarships that their student may qualify for. 28% made a trade-off between their perceived likelihood of winning. 22% didn't have the time to apply. 17% didn't think the scholarships were legitimate. So basically, having trouble determining what a legitimate scholarship is or isn't. 14% missed the deadline. So they had intent to apply, but missed the deadline. And then 13% thought it was too much of an effort. There are millions of dollars in scholarship funds that families don't take advantage of each year that are left unclaimed, largely due to a lack of applicants, just simply not applying. And then obviously these basic misconceptions that we just mentioned. So here's the last slide on statistics to kind of set the stage. So we asked our study participants agreement level with a few additional questions about scholarships. The first question was, do you think scholarships are only available for students with exceptional grades or abilities? 46% of college families agreed with this statement, which means that almost half of college families were unaware that there are thousands of scholarships that are awarded based on criteria that have nothing to do with grades or athletics. For almost every skill, interest, and hobby, there's a scholarship out there. And a new data point that we collected in 2025 report told us that 36% of college families think that students can only apply for scholarships before their freshman or first year in college. And of course, we all know that scholarships should apply, or we all know that students should apply for scholarships early and often. It's an activity to be undertaken throughout their entire college journey. So first year, second year, third year, fourth year, graduate years, even certain community continuing education programs have scholarships available for them. So finally, 32% of families thought it was not worth applying for scholarships when the parents make too much money. While we did mention some scholarships are going to be need-based, many others don't consider the financial situation or the family circumstances at all. So with that, let's go ahead and shift over to some scholarship resources. And scholarships, again, just as a reminder, are financial aid awards that do not have to be repaid. They are essentially free money. And a scholarship might cover the entire cost of your tuition, or it might be a one-time award of a few $100s. Either way, they're worth applying for because it'll help reduce the cost of your education. And more often than not, like I mentioned, directly impacting or reducing parent income and savings or student income and savings as funding sources for your education. So if you're wondering when and how to apply, each scholarship is going to have its own unique requirements and will indicate on their websites who qualifies, what you need to do to apply, and when the deadline dates are, and whether or not you're going to need to write an essay. Some deadlines are as early as a year before college starts, so if you're in high school now, you should be researching and applying for scholarships. But if you've missed that window, don't give up. Look at scholarship information to see which ones you can still apply for right now. And also, too, make sure that you read the application carefully. Fill it out completely and meet the application deadline. So let's talk about some of the scholarships types that are available. Some people believe that scholarships, again, are only for athletes and those that have high academic grades. In some cases, that is true, but there are so many other opportunities. In fact, you wouldn't believe the types and number available. And again, like I mentioned before, for almost every skill, interest, and hobby, there's a scholarship out there. And the challenge is basically looking for the right scholarship, and it can take some time, but students should realize how important this free money can be because the more free money you can get for college, the less you have to borrow. Scholarships, too, can also be awarded for a variety of reasons, as you can see from the list here on the slide. So there are millions of dollars in scholarships, but where do you find them? And we're going to talk a little bit about online search engines here in a second. But you can find scholarships by employers, private companies, nonprofit organizations, community organizations, religious groups, professional organizations, as well as social organizations. Something you can do is ask your family and friends if their employer or any organizations they're involved with offer scholarships, and if you're employed, ask your employer if they offer a scholarship program. You'd be surprised at how many private organizations have scholarship programs now. And you might also want to check with your college counselor as well as your high schools. If you happen to be in high school, they should be publishing a list of local scholarships. One thing to note too, you may say to yourself, well, I think that there might be a lot of scholarships that are available in our community. We just don't necessarily know where to look. Many times community scholarships will the donors or the folks that oversee the scholarship management will typically contact colleges or universities in the immediate area. But if that is not the case, maybe you live in a city that doesn't, or a town that doesn't happen to have a college, then they typically will let the high schools know about it or the school district know. But if for some reason that doesn't necessarily work, some community organization places, so think of like libraries, for instance, is a great place to learn about community scholarships, or, chambers of commerce sometimes, or if there's local bulletin boards or a meeting group area. A lot of times scholarships can be advertised there. Any place where the community public would gather. And it's a great place to utilize to try and find more about your local or your community's specific scholarships. So I had just mentioned scholarship engines, and if you've never used one, you're probably wondering what I'm talking about. And these are going to be really helpful resources, and so we want to kind of focus a little bit more on them. So basically what a scholarship search engine is it basically is a place where an entity will house an aggregate list of scholarships and allow users to be matched to scholarships based on personal information that you use either in a search or a filtering service or some sort of aspect where you maybe even build a profile, for instance. The idea behind this is building a profile with your unique talents, your unique traits, maybe organizations that you've been affiliated with, community research or community involvement, your grades, as well as any type of merit, your athletics, or if you happen to be a member of Key Club or DECA or something along those lines. By putting all of that information into a profile or some sort of a data housing, or if the scholarship search engine you're using doesn't happen to have that, they may have a filter service that allows for you to sort by those various different categories. The idea is that it will come up with a list of scholarships that best fit your profile. And with that, when you look through the scholarships, hopefully you will get a better sense or a feeling that you qualify for that scholarship more because it's looking for some of your unique traits and therefore potentially allows for you to have a better chance of winning. And again, when you're starting to use scholarship search engines or looking for scholarships in any matter, this is not just for your junior or senior year in high school. You're going to want to either update a profile or use a scholarship search engine that uses a filtering service on a routine basis. And if you do happen to have the potential of having a profile that's savable, you'll want to make sure that every semester you go in and update your GPA, add or subtract any activities or organizations that you're involved with at the college, especially too if you're necessarily looking at a certain major and maybe you change your major, or maybe you're undeclared for the first year or two and you are declaring your major by year 3 of college. Make sure you keep that profile up to date because every time that you make a change, it's going to come up with a different sort criteria because its goal is to try and match you with scholarships that best fit your profile. Lastly, when you're using a scholarship search engine, a top tip is to look for scholarship applications that should not cost a fee to apply. And that also goes for the actual scholarship search engine as well. There are millions of scholarships out there. When you're looking for the scholarship search engine that you want to use, you can do a little bit of a vetting process. If they're looking for a subscription service or if they're looking for some sort of payment in order to access the names of the scholarships, chances are if you do a little bit more looking or maybe stumble upon another scholarship search service, chances are you'll probably find those for free. So just kind of a tip out there that if you're looking at having to pay money in order to try and look for money, chances are those services are going to be provided in a relatively simple but slightly different search. So talking a little bit more about scholarship search engines, they again can help you narrow your search and guide you to the perfect scholarships based on your profile. There are some things that you should look for in a scholarship search engine. So look for scholarship search tools that are free. And again, I want to stress that never pay for applications. As I mentioned, we don't recommend paying to have someone also help you find scholarships because typically what we found is that the scholarship folks that you pay for typically are utilizing a lot of the same services that are available to you for free. Now, again, if you don't have time or maybe the effort or something like that, and you deem that you want to use a provider to go out and look for scholarships, that's going to be a personal choice. All we're simply saying is that many times the services that they're providing typically can be found for free if you do your own search. And then also too, when you're looking at search engines, that validation of scholarships is up to date. So if a scholarship search engine has maybe like in the about section, they'll talk about how maybe they've processed their scholarships or they've vetted them, meaning that they understand that it's a true company or a provider or a foundation, that the scholarship is true and accurate, and that they're not necessarily offering a scholarship for nefarious reasons. Scholarship search engines usually have some sort of a statement on their website that speaks to that. Now, it might sound a little marketing-y. It might not necessarily have a tremendous amount of detail behind it, but any of them that really don't have anything out there about it, or if you're seeing that maybe some of these scholarship searches that you're on, the scholarships that they're providing seem to have, a lot of or an inordinate amount of stuff that you routinely see when you're not on such great websites. That might be a potential that you found a scholarship search engine that maybe not necessarily is specific, guided towards students and the best of their abilities and intentions, that maybe they're doing it for marketing purposes. And lastly, too, scholarship search services, online tools are moving to mobile friendly platforms. What's really nice is because you're going to be looking for free money at all hours or potential of all hours, having it be available on your phone to where you're walking in between class and you've got 20 minutes to kill. That is a great time to go out and see or update your profile, put in, maybe look for a couple of scholarships, do a quick search to see how many are out there so that when you do have a little bit more downtime later that night or later in the week, you can schedule that time to do a deeper dive into the scholarships and maybe even get a chance to apply for a couple of them. So there's no better time to start searching for scholarships and winning them than right now. Back in the days, more than a few years ago or so, there was what was called a scholarship season. And scholarship season usually went from sometime mid to late summer through November and maybe possibly into December. And that was considered scholarship season. But with the millions of scholarships that are available out there, there is no true scholarship season anymore. There might be more scholarships that are offered between midsummer and November, let's say, but that does not mean that there aren't scholarships offered any other time of year. There's millions offered all throughout the year. So after you've been matched with some possible scholarships through a scholarship search engine, or if you've gone out and researched local communities and such, what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to put in a little bit of work to apply. Each application will have its own criteria, but many are going to require some form of a scholarship essay or what we call a writing assignment. And if this makes you nervous, we're going to cover a couple of tips and ideas on how to get started and how to focus on the right things in your essay. You're going to want to write one that shows, how you are the best fit for that money. This isn't going to be your typical school essay. This is a chance to show who you are, your grades, your test scores and such, but also too beyond that. Especially nowadays, scholarship providers, foundations, and such want a holistic picture of who their potential winner of a scholarship is. So, a couple of tips when you're starting into the application process. The first tip is to start early. Give yourself plenty of time to brainstorm and come up with your ideas, and then kind of create an outline and edit your entry as you would for any essay writing assignment that you're doing for an English class. Craft a few, well-written essays that highlight your strengths. These typically can be adapted for multiple scholarship applications. We never recommend writing one applicate or one essay and then mailing it out to a plethora of scholarship applications or scholarship providers. It's not bad to have a couple of versions of your essay available, but as you read through the application process, you're going to want to see some of the abilities, the knowledge, or what they're looking for, even the company's mission statement, if it's a company that's providing the scholarship, or the foundation's mission statement, how does it tie into what your major is? You're going to want to customize those essays. So it's great to have essays on hand, but simply just don't go into your files, cut and paste it, and send it on its way. Customize that essay that speaks specifically to questions or thoughts or the mission statement that is on the essay or a part of what the company is that's offering it. Um, you know, request recommendations thoughtfully. One of the things too is that there are going to be scholarship applications that are going to want to hear from others as to speak to your character or to validate some of the information that you may have put on your scholarship essay. So if letters of recommendations are required, we always recommend that you start early. Give teachers or mentors or somebody that's integral in your life that you would think that you would want to ask a letter of recommendation for, give them at least 3 weeks in order to write something that's going to be meaningful and personalized. If you do it any sooner than that, then they are going to tend to probably ask you for things that they want to be able to write about. So essentially, you're giving them tips and stuff to write about, when in fact the scholarship providers and founders or foundation representatives want to hear, directly from the person that's doing the letter of recommendation from you. They're going to want to hear directly from them so that they can get an idea or a sense as to who you really are. They certainly don't want the student to write it with the person just signing off on it. And trust me, with the amount of applications that scholarship providers read, sometimes in upwards of hundreds of applications a year for various different scholarships, because again, many foundations and donors do not just manage one scholarship, they may manage multiple scholarships. They can get a really good sense as to levels of writing, who may have potentially written it, and so on and so forth. You certainly don't want to cast any doubt in your letters of recommendation. When you're writing on your academic achievements and stuff, it's okay to focus on your strengths. If you do have, high academics, or you've been part of leadership roles or community service or any other type of personal growth, now's your time to highlight that. You don't want to be boastful, but it's okay to be prideful, because essentially you are competing for money and you do need to show why you are going to be the best fit for winning that scholarship. So again, being boastful sometimes can turn off a scholarship provider or a foundation. But simply just stating, where your grades are, maybe your position in the class, I'm third in class, second, valedictorian, whatever. Or if you've got unique leadership abilities, and you started off as some sort of role in an organization, and you were able to achieve the leadership role and actually guide in some of the community efforts you were doing, and you were able to do that in less than a year. Again, doing it from a prideful standpoint, showing them that you've got leadership capabilities, that you're able to take direction, but you're able to also give direction and manage. That is fine. But to basically state something very boastful on how you were able to get that position, that tends to kind of have negative perceptions with scholarship providers and foundations. And again, lastly, stay organized, keep track of deadlines, use Excel spreadsheets or Word documents to keep yourself organized. And because again, surprisingly, if you're working one, two, three, or maybe even five scholarship applications, and there's slightly little differences to them, being organized will make sure that you're giving the proper information on an application in order for you to be what you hope is the best candidate to win that scholarship. Um, Keep looking for scholarships all throughout the year. Set reminders on a calendar, dedicate some time, maybe the first day of every month, or whatever works out for you, to look for scholarships. Because again, scholarships are available throughout the year. They're available from first year to fourth year students at undergrad levels. They're available for graduate students and whatnot. And then lastly, too, take breaks when needed. If you're feeling overwhelmed, take a break, but don't give up. By taking that break, hopefully you can come back refreshed, reanalyze your thoughts, get them down on paper, Have somebody review that. Make sure you're having somebody read it, proof it, because a lot of times we will write things and we will say stuff in our heads and transfer it to paper, and it makes total sense to us. But if somebody outside of your brain reads it, maybe they're going to have a little bit of trouble of what you're trying to comprehend, or maybe they see run-on sentences that your mind skipped over because you knew what you were trying to say, so your mind didn't necessarily flag you that you had a run-on sentence or punctuation errors. All of that is important in scholarship applications. So again, let's talk a little bit more about the actual essay. Again, make sure that you include advice or wisdom that you've received because it demonstrates that you're listening to the advice of others. A lot of times scholarships, or maybe sometimes scholarships will have a question, how do you work? Are you more independent or are you dependent? Or do you like to work in large groups, for instance, or do you tend to work alone? You'll see that on scholarship applications. You may even see it on job applications moving forward. Showing some of the advice or the wisdom that you've seen on both aspects is going to really give the scholarship providers something to think about. It shows, that you're willing to listen to the advice of others. It shows that you can work in a communicative effort, and that multiple people can come together for the good of moving a project along or an initiative or whatever the case may be. And it shows that you had an integral part in it and that you were a team player. That having said that, if there is something that highlights more of your independency and how you were able to take on something alone or on your own, that is also a great attribute to explore and promote. So again, think about some of your experiences. Don't write about every single one of them. Make sure that what you're writing about is pertinent to the question or the application questions from the scholarship provider. But just think about what your experience was, what you've learned, and what some of the advice or some of the takeaways were from working that. Also, too, know your audience. Tailor your tone and your content to the scholarship provider's values and goals. Make sure that you research the company or the organization that is supplying the scholarship opportunity. Make sure or try and see if that organization's mission or their purpose can be worked into your essay. And hopefully, fingers crossed, because you've used some sort of a search or some sort of tool in order to have scholarships provided to you that kind of meet some of your specificity, hopefully that should not be a difficult lift. And then lastly, too, like we mentioned before, be authentic. Share genuine experiences, goals, challenges, all of that. Authenticity resonates more than perfection. And if a question is being asked on an application that you have to write about, and you did not have a particular instance that has happened in your life that speaks to that question, don't make something up. Because again, scholarship providers get very good at being able to determine what they perceive as true and accurate versus what they consider maybe slightly illegitimate or not legitimate at all. You certainly wouldn't want to write about something that cast any doubt in your application. So sometimes if something doesn't happen in your life that matches up with the question that's being asked, think of something that happened in your life that is similar and specify that. Say in your application or your essay, although this did not necessarily happen with me, or I've not had the experience in this particular field, what I have had is, and then lay out what your experience is, and then draw the correlation between what you've learned in that experience and how it applies to the question that was asked on the essay. Again, just want to re-stress again, proofreading. Many times, making sure that you've got some sort of a calendar that keeps you up to date as to when applications are due. That tends to have a direct correlation with proofreading or spelling errors or whatnot that are in applications. When you write it and you rewrite it again, and you've got time to read it, you've got time to have others read it before the submission date, those efforts pay off. But if you're trying to fill out an application at 9 o'clock at night to try and beat a 10 o'clock PM submission time frame, you're going to be running into issues. So being prepared, having a good calendar, allowing for you to develop your thoughts and put them into an essay so that you can proofread properly is really going to pay off. Many scholarship providers, if they see too many run-on sentences or incorrect punctuation or other types of grammatical mistakes, sometimes those applications won't even make it to the next round, or they will be what we call round filed, which essentially is thrown in the trash, because there are probably other applications out there that did meet the qualifications and did have coherent sentence and formatting structure. So again, lastly, be prideful, not boastful. Okay to highlight your strengths, showcase your academic achievements, your leadership roles, all of that. They don't expect you to be perfect, but they would like to see maybe if you've been able to overcome hardship, maybe you've been able to succeed despite obstacles in your path. Talk about what you learned and the times that you failed. Telling your story in an essay that is genuine is ultimately going to be more memorable to the scholarship committee. Now let's talk a little bit about the don'ts, okay? Don't overuse famous quotes. It is going to feel very, unpersonal or not personal. Okay, this goes without saying, but don't have AI write your essay. That will likely be detected by the scholarship committee, and you probably could, there's a good chance you could be disqualified. And so, you want to avoid any of those grandiose ways to describe the scholarship. Just be authentic. That's the best way. Don't look for shock and awe value. Again, that tends to kind of be more boastful. Keep it more level-headed, prideful, and such, But also too, on that factor, don't be too generic. Vague statements like, I want to help people for a community service centric scholarship. That doesn't mean anything to a scholarship provider. How is it that you want to help people? What is it that you've done in the past in order to help succeed in your mission in helping people? Give some, keep it simple, but not generic. Too wordy can also, throw off scholarship providers or reviewers. Get to the concept or describe the concept, get to the point quickly, but give them enough detail so that they understand exactly who you are and how you are going to be the best fit for that scholarship. And like I said, if it's helping people, give them specificity as to how you would want to help people, and hopefully it fits in with the same mission statement that the scholarship provider has. Don't use informal language, avoiding slang, emojis, don't be overly casual in your scholarship approach. Keep it respectful, keep it professional. And one thing that you may want to also too is try and avoid humor. Humor is very touch and go. A lot of times when you are writing humor into an essay, it can be misconceived, or it can be received incorrectly by a scholarship provider. Sometimes, that same statement that you wrote down, if delivered verbally in a group setting or so, may resonate very well. But sometimes when you're trying to write that out in words, it may not come across the same way. The last thing you would want to have happen is have a scholarship not be awarded to you because something was deemed off color, or a scholarship review committee thought what you had put down was not professional. And lastly, too, don't neglect the conclusion. Always end with a strong summary of what you have originally written, that is going to reinforce your message and leave a lasting impression. Again, you want to be able to brag, but don't have all of the substance and the minutia that goes along with it that makes it long-winded. Again, it's important to highlight your achievements, but back them up with context and humility. Show how they've shaped your goals or your values. And again, don't be so modest that you downplay your accomplishments. It is okay, again, I'll say it again, be prideful, not boastful. This is your chance to shine. Just do it with balance, and make sure that you're showing passion and purpose. Any essays that are flat or disconnected from your goals are not going to stand out. Being enthusiastic, but again, not boastful, and being motivating is what committees would like to see. And if, and again, keep it professional. So again, takeaways, a good essay, it's going to show someone's background, it's going to show your experiences, your ambitions, and it's going to show your personality. It's an opportunity to make a strong and lasting impression. Hopefully some of these tips can help. And again, be original and genuine and honest. Always choose a topic that you truly enjoy or are passionate about or something that was meaningful in your life if you have an open essay writing assignment. Don't be afraid to say why you think you deserve the scholarship. And don't put too much information not related to the topic on the scholarship into your essay. Stick with the simple story and the message. Sometimes scholarships will say, please tell us a little bit about yourself. And typically, we've seen some scholarship essays come in all the way from your birth all the way until age 18, and no detail was left out. If you are one of these folks that want to put your entire story down, you're definitely going to want to make sure that your essay is reviewed, and have more than one person review it. Have somebody that can be critical in a positive way, as opposed to maybe a family member who understands what you're trying to convey, to see if it's too much for them. And again, if the essay is open, then you're going to just want to highlight certain aspects that have happened in your life. And again, if you can tie them into a concept that is being asked for in the scholarship in other areas, or maybe towards a mission statement of the provider, or maybe towards your degree or program of study that you're looking for, focus on those. You don't have to give everything to a scholarship provider. And then lastly, again, always be positive. State how you were inspired or what you learned from a particular act, as opposed to stating things that are negative. I always use the example of maybe working at a local fast food establishment, talking about how bad it is and how the people are so disrespectful and that it's dirty and that you can't wait to get out of there. That is not going to leave a lasting, it's not going to leave a positive lasting impression by this with the scholarship committee. What I would consider or take a look at is talking about some of the aspects that you learned while working at a particular establishment. State, although many of the customers I worked with were disrespectful. I learned that many of them had time constraints. Many of them had other things that were going in life, and they simply just needed their lunch provided. And the takeaway is that I learned that these people are in every bit of as a hurry as I am when I'm outside of work or school. And that maybe frontline customer service is not what I want to do. However, I still want to work with people, and I would like to organize things so that other colleagues can be the boots on the ground. Something like that, where you're still talking about what you learned, you've kept it positive in tone, but yet you're still portraying the same message of it's maybe not something that was best for you. So final takeaways, as a quick reminder, there's going to be some numerous or different types of scholarships that you can apply for. There's going to be academic scholarships, ones that don't require essays, some that don't require minimum GPA requirements. Some of them are going to be based on your degree or major. Some of them will be merit-based. Some of them will be need-based. There are going to be scholarships that almost all are entirely based on your ethnicity or race. And yes, there are still some that are out there. There are some that are based on gender, disability, first generation scholars, students, maybe military affiliation, community service, the list goes on and on. And in some of the scholarship tools that you can find, they'll have scholarships based on hobbies and interests like music or dance or photography. There are state specific scholarships. There are scholarships based on personal characteristics. The takeaway is there is something out there for you that makes you unique. We just need to make sure that you're using the avenues to find them. So lastly, some of the tips to go away with, make sure that you're organized, that will help you navigate the entire process. It will actually end up saving you time. Being more focused will save you time. It'll probably result in a much better product that you're sending off to the scholarship review committee. Be authentic. Tell your story that represents you, your genuine experiences, your goals, your challenges. Authenticity is going to resonate more than perfection. Know the requirements that you can make sure that you have addressed all of what is being looked for in the application. And again, if you don't happen to have a life experience, think about using something that's happened in your life that is similar. If they're looking for letters of recommendation, use strong recommendations. Reach out to teachers, coaches, employers, people that can provide a positive and a somewhat unbiased recommendation about you. These folks will have recommendations that tend to resonate more with scholarship providers than a letter of recommendation from a parent or a family member. There is a level or a belief that they have to say nice things about you. But yet, and a teacher or a coach or employer is probably going to be more objective. And typically, again, even if there are some strengths that they highlight that are good for you and maybe some weaknesses or so, it again will show that you are authentic and that sometimes will resonate more than being perfect. Lastly, make sure that you stick with the deadlines. Don't miss out on any opportunities because you forgot about it or you put something down or you thought in your head it was due on a Friday when it was due on a Wednesday. Keep a calendar, keep a spreadsheet, whatnot. Showcase your honors, your awards. Again, it's okay to shine. Don't be too overtly bragful or boastful. Don't just tell what you've done, but use specific examples or use certain anecdotes that illustrate your achievements and character so that they can really get an idea as to who you are as opposed to what you look like on paper. Again, you want your essay to kind of come alive. And lastly, too, don't rule out smaller scholarships. They can add up quickly, and for every dollar that you find, it's basically $1 that you will not need to borrow. And again, you can start looking for scholarships as early as your junior year. It's great to know where they are. You may not necessarily want or are able to apply to them right now, but at least you'll know where they are and you know the timeline on where they're available come your senior year. So again, if you're a junior in high school, start looking now. But if you're past your junior year, you're a senior now, or you're up through college now, be looking for scholarships in some of the avenues that I talked. They're all available and they're all out there. Sometimes you may ask yourself, once you win a scholarship, what do you do? Basically, it's okay to ask the scholarship provider, how am I going to receive the money? Is it going to be sent to me or is it going to be sent to the school? It's okay to ask the financial aid office, is this scholarship going to affect my other financial aid? Many financial aid offices will try and reduce your loans first to try and make room for a scholarship. But if you don't happen to have any what we call self-help, like loans or so, sometimes they may have to reduce other grants that you've received, which is other free money, but typically you may allow to have that eligibility at a later time, maybe in year 2, 3, or 4, when you may not have received a scholarship. So you certainly want to talk to financial aid to see how that scholarship's going to be affecting your aid. And then lastly, too, see if the scholarship is renewable. Can you win it a next year? Or do you have to submit something in order to get the second semester disbursement? Do you have to submit your grades? Or do you have to have some sort of sign off? Do you have to attend a scholarship luncheon? Sometimes a provider will state, we want you to meet the donor and we want you to have lunch with them. And in so doing, that will allow for you to receive scholarship disbursements 2, 3, and 4, for instance. So make sure that you ask, and it's perfectly fine to do so. And lastly, don't forget your thank yous. Write a thank you to the scholarship provider, write a thank you to the foundation or the donor of the money. And then also, too, consider writing thank yous to those that helped you, especially those that wrote letters of recommendation. So we covered a lot of information today. I know that Provident also has a lot of great information. If you want to learn more about some other type of college planning and financial resources, you can certainly take a picture of the QR code to the right, or you can visit providentcu.enrich.org for more information.